When I was 23, I moved into my cousin's basement apartment. He had just bought the house and was renting out the lower level for some extra income. The setup was perfect: separate entrance, a decent-sized living space, and enough privacy to feel independent while still saving money. It was a quiet neighborhood, mostly older folks, so I never had to worry about noisy neighbors or sketchy activity. At least, that's what I thought. One Friday night, I had a few friends over, Tommy and Ben. We weren't doing anything crazy and just drinking, playing video games and catching up. I kept the door to the main house unlocked, since my cousin was out of town. I occasionally ran upstairs to grab beers from his fridge. The night went on, the music got louder, and by the time we were winding down, it was past 2 a.m. Tommy and Ben decided to crash on the couch instead of driving home. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up, not because of a dream or anything, just that weird feeling, like something was off. Then, I heard it, a creaking sound from above. I brushed it off at first, figuring maybe I left a window open upstairs and the wind was messing with something. But then, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps. They weren't heavy, but they weren't light enough to be a house-settling noise either. I sat up, listening. The sound moved from the kitchen to the hallway above me. Then, it stopped. I waited, my heart racing, but nothing happened. Eventually, I convinced myself I was imagining things and went back to sleep. The next morning, Tommy and Ben took off. I spent most of the day out, running errands. When I got home that night, I was exhausted. I grabbed some food, watched TV for a bit, and then went to bed. That's when it happened again. A creak. Then another. It was the same slow, measured pace. I turned my TV off and just listened. This time, the footsteps stopped directly above my bedroom. I barely breathed. Then the doorknob to my bedroom twisted. I froze. My door was locked, but my mind was racing. Tommy and Ben were gone. My cousin was still out of town. Nobody else had a key. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking. I wanted to text someone, but who? And what would I even say? Then, a knock, a slow, deliberate knock. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then, the sound of fingernails lightly dragging down my door. I could barely swallow to the lump in my throat. Then, silence. I don't know how long I stayed like that, sitting up in bed, clutching my phone. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. But eventually, I worked up the nerve to call the cops. I spoke in a whisper, explaining what was happening. The operator told me to stay put and keep my door locked. They were sending officers. I waited and waited. Then, bang! A loud crash from upstairs. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Then, running, fast, heavy footsteps, like someone was sprinting through the house. I didn't move until I heard the police banging on the front door. I let them in, and they searched the house. Nothing. But then, one of the officers pointed something out. The attic hatch in the hallway ceiling, just barely ajar. My cousin's house didn't have an attic, just crawl space between the roof and the ceiling. Not big enough for storage, not big enough for a person, or so we thought. One of the cops pulled the hatch open and shined his flashlight up. The beam of light caught something, an old, crumpled blanket, and an empty fast food bag. Someone had been living in there. There was a small hole in the attic floor, just big enough to peek through, and it was right above my bedroom. I never heard them come down, but they had been watching, waiting, and I had no idea for how long. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people left their doors unlocked, where kids played outside till dark, and real danger felt like something that only happened somewhere else. But after what happened when I was 16, I never felt safe again. My parents went out of town for the weekend. I was alone. Didn't mind. Horror movies, junk food, no rules. It was just past midnight when I first heard it. Click. I muted the TV, listened. A soft, deliberate tap on the glass door. My breath caught in my throat. I crept toward the curtain, slowly peeked outside. A figure, standing just beyond the porch light. No mask, no movement, just staring. My hands trembled. I inched toward my phone, but then, "Hey, my name." Open the door. I froze. He knew my name. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I could barely whisper, "Who are you?" No answer, just silence. I turned and ran upstairs. Bedroom door locked, hands shaking as I dialed 911. Then footsteps, not outside, inside, slow, deliberate, down the hallway. A knock, soft, polite. "Hey, my name. Let me in." I pressed against the wall. The operator's voice blurred in my ears. Sirens. They were close. The knocking stopped. Silence. The police arrived. Checked every room. No one. No forced entry. But then security camera footage in one single frame. A man standing at the back door 2 nights ago, meaning he had been watching, waiting. And I never even knew. But there was something worse. The police rewound the footage. They zoomed in, and I saw it. Not just him. A second figure. Standing deep in the yard, barely visible. Watching him. But here's the thing. When they checked the rest of the footage, the man at my door, he left. The other one never did, and I never saw him again. When I was 17, I worked the late shift at a small convenience store near a quiet road. It was usually boring, just cleaning, checking stock, and waiting for the occasional customer. One night, around 2 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, tall, gaunt, wearing a heavy coat despite the warm weather. His sunken eyes locked onto mine. "What time do you get off work?" he asked, in a dry whisper. Uneasy, I forced a chuckle. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and wandered into an aisle. On the security camera, I saw him standing there, motionless. Then he moved toward the bathroom. I exhaled, trying to shake my nerves. But then, a faint tapping from under the counter. I hesitated, then slowly opened the cabinet. Wide, terrified eyes stared up at me. A girl, mouth taped shut. Heart pounding, I called 911. The man stepped out, saw the open cabinet. His eyes darkened. Then red and blue lights flashed outside. Police tackled him. The girl had been missing for 2 days. That was my last night shift.